You've built a successful life, but now what? Welcome to the Gen X Collective podcast. We're for men who are navigating midlife with purpose, health, wealth, family, work, and the mark you've made on the world. We're talking about the stuff that really matters with experts who have solutions, advice, and a sense of humor. And now, here's our host, Laurent Truc.
Welcome back to the Gen X Collective podcast, where we talk about what really matters for men in the second half of life. Today's episode is for anyone who feels like they've achieved a lot, but still wonder, is there more? Many Gen X men are asking themselves, do I have one more meaningful chapter in me? And more importantly, what would that look like? To help us answer that, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sharon Mah-Gin, a powerhouse in executive recruitment, a master networker, and a coach to professionals in transition. Sharon has helped countless leaders recalibrate and find alignment in the second half of their careers. She's here to help us find our true north. Sharon, welcome to the podcast.
That's great. I'm happy, delighted to be here, Laurent.
I appreciate you taking the time. We'd love to start from the top. You have an incredible background. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a high level of who you are and how you got here?
Sure. Okay. So, this is part of a personal introduction personal branding workshop thing that we do on how to introduce yourself, which is the present, past, and the future, but you adjust it. But anyway, so I'm Sharon Mah-Gin. I'm an executive search consultant with an executive search alliance. That's the present. And then the past is I'm a CA from EY, and I worked in retail and real estate. And then mid-career, I gave it all up to go into executive search. I worked for Korn Ferry International, the world's largest executive search firm. And I helped them build 4 practice areas: and consumer, retail, industrial, and healthcare. And so what that means, Laurent, is I did the CEO search for Starbucks. I did the treasurer search at Manulife. Wow. I built the strategy practice at Accenture, and I did the CEO search at Toronto General Hospital. But 25 years ago, they went public, and it became less about the client and more about the shareholders. So myself and 2 other colleagues left, and we formed our own executive search firm. And what differentiates us is that we bring to the table the professionalism, process, and network of a tier 1 global search firm, but the personal touch and flexibility of a boutique. And what we do is we really work on retained executive searches at the VP, C-level, board level, across all industries and functions.
And for those who don't know, so this is corporations that are hiring you to put their top executives in place.
Correct. And not just corporations, but family-run businesses, probably equity firms. Actually, sometimes those are my most enjoyable searches. It's where you build out a team, owner-operator. I think I mentioned to you that I'm doing references, so I'm actually working with an owner-operator, putting in one of their finance leads. So sometimes that can be fun. So I can work with clients that include Tier 1, Fortune 100 companies, right down to companies that have just raised $5 million in financing. How do we commercialize this technology? And you would know that a lot from your background, Laurent, in terms of internet businesses.
Very cool. Very cool. So would love to get your perspective on what Gen X men are going through career-wise in midlife right now.
Sure, absolutely. So what I see, the way I'm defining Gen X men is sort of between 45 to 60 is how I would define that. And so I see a lot of them that are either bored, plateaued out, burnt out. I see some that are still successful and maybe not feeling fulfilled. Like I need more than just a paycheck. I see men are men. So, I mean, they sometimes they don't share their thoughts, right? They're just not a part of social groups, you know what I mean? Where you can really, with close friends that you share openly. As we all know, women are really good at that. Like I can maybe say I belong to 4 different women groups. Like, you know what I mean? Some that I've known since my CA days, some that I've known, as a women's investment club, some that have just been eclectic collection of neighbors, friends who know neighbors, but then you gel. And we talk about everything. You know what I mean? I'm part of a group called Bula Bula, where our sole focus, 8 couples, 16 of us, our sole focus is just to have fun. And everyone has to come up with a fun idea, whether it's going on the largest cruise ship in the world with 7,000 people, you know what I mean, to having a Hawaiian party. So, I mean, it's the social side, right? They often say that that's really important for longevity in life.
Yeah.
So I'm digressing a little bit here, but I'll say the other thing is sometimes the fear of changing too late. You feel like you're stuck, can I still make a change, or is this it? And then I can certainly talk a lot more about that. And then, you've got that sort of 45 to 60 where a lot of people are counting on you, your families, your kids, adult kids at home. I have a lot of friends where the kids are still living at home. I left at the age of 20 as soon as I graduated, but, they often say, you can't say you're an empty nester until your kids have gone for 2 years, because they boomerang back and forth for a while. So so Laurent, I know you've got that. You're getting to that stage.
Yeah, my 18-year-old.
Home that you're an emptiness. So don't start changing those rooms, those bedrooms quickly.
Duly noted.
Yeah. So sometimes there's that fear. You don't want to gamble all this away because you still need some stability. Maybe you need the income. You've got a lot of people depending on you. So those are some of the trends that I'm seeing as a general comment.
With this men's group that we had a kickoff, I was telling you a couple of weeks ago, and there were a lot of individuals talking about that, this career transition, the feeling unfulfilled, but having so many responsibilities and accountabilities that they don't want to risk a career that they've built over 25, 30, 35 years. And it's a very challenging time for them. And sometimes it's, I need something new, and sometimes it's something new is going to be placed on me because the job's going away, or transition is forced at times, right?
Well, that's where I see it a lot. Like I ended up with a lot of people that lost their jobs. They thought they had a job in life, and then boom, they get that pig slip or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, what do I do with myself? And I can really see some of them are crushed. I'll be honest, absolutely crushed. I have no idea. They haven't done any networking. They have no sense of where they're going. They totally lost their North Star. And then I've had CEOs where, Sharon, I'm going to retire at 50 and write a book. And one of the big heads of a marketing company has done that. You know what I mean? Where he had a total plan. I would do succession planning. The age of 50, I'm going to retire. And he's written, I think, 3 books now. Wow. So you have some that are very focused. And some who is just like head down, 20 years with the same company. I'm going to retire from this company, but then something happens, right? Changes, etc. And sometimes it's not your choice. Mm-hmm. You're forced into that decision.
So I'd love your thoughts on this. For some people, it's crushing. It's very demoralizing that all of a sudden they've lost their jobs. Whereas for others, they feel, wow, couldn't have been at a better time. I've been looking or meaning to look for more meaning in my life. And I have now 30 years of work experience, 30 years of savings, 30 years of just, we're better off now.
Wisdom is what
Wisdom, yes.
I have to say, when people thank me for advice, I go, I ask for 2 things: pay it forward, and number 2, thank you, makes me feel better about my gray hair. We earned every single one of those.
There you go. So yeah, I'd love your perspective on that. Is needing to find a job or wanting to find a job from 40 to 60, is that a good time or a bad time? Like, what are the general thoughts?
Ron, that's a great question. I would say certainly in your 40s, it's a fantastic time. And the way I try to explain to young people is in your 20s, so you can pass this advice on to your kids. But in your 20s, after you graduate, you get to play a little bit. You get to try out different careers, etc. Because I'm also seeing at that level a lot of stress, where they think they have to figure it all out. I say, no. You get to, 2 to 4 years, try out different roles, different jobs. You get to play a little bit. By the age of 30, you should have sort of seen some trends. Okay, I think I'm going to not go to medical school, or I'm going to go this way, etc. Right? And so then what we say, I think when we do executive search, our top type of what we call the A candidate profile-wise is someone that's gone to a good university, maybe got a secondary degree, like an MBA or whatever. They would have worked for tier 1 corporate companies, 2 to 4 year building blocks. Like every time you make a job change, I want to hear why you made that change. It gave me people management, it gave me a larger P&L, etc. Right? And so, then I want you to go work for a smaller company. I want to know that you can
Interesting.
flex and that you can work in an unstructured environment and be able to think. Because, executives is all about the soft skills, right? It's all about the critical thinking skills, the strategy, et cetera. When I do executive search, I lead first by soft skills. The EI, the soft skills, the critical thinking skills, the strategic. The second piece are skills, and the third is comp. If I get number 1 and number 2 correct, comp is never an issue. The search I'm doing right now, comp is not an issue because the fit is there, so are the skills, right? And everyone wants the win-win. So then what I say is that, so in your 30s, you're sort of building that building block. Go work for a small company. And by the time you're 40 to 50, those should be your peak income earning years. Okay. We like the profile. We don't want someone 20 years at a company, and we don't want someone necessarily always corporate. It's really good if it's tier 1 corporate, and then 2 to 4 year building block. There's some smaller entrepreneurial companies that shows that you can flex. You can do more with less. You can think outside the box. A lot of these companies don't have structure. And then on top of that, you build, of course, the soft skills, right? Critical thinking skills, strategic, those skills are hard to teach, but they can certainly, you can role model them especially if you've had a good coach and mentor. Is what I say.
What is, you and I talked beforehand about your true north and finding your true north. Can you talk a little bit about your context? Because you went through an awakening in terms of a career perspective. Would love to hear your story and then your view on what true north really means.
Okay, I would love to share my story. I share it many times, Laurent. And true north for me, number 1, passion. True north is finding your passion. Let me say it again.
Hard stop.
True north is finding your passion. And now if we talk about my story, here I am, a CA, a chartered accountant. I tell everybody, it just means I can't add. So I started off my career as a CA, and I was back in that era. That was, you were either an accountant, a banking, or a lawyer, but you and me was those sorts of career. Remember, when I graduated, there was no internet. So we have to frame this properly, okay? So I did go to EY, I called from Queens, I got my CA, and I did it for a number of years, but honestly, it was killing me. I mean, doing numbers are not my thing. I'm not an analytical numbers thing, but to get your CA, a lot of it's case study. So what it taught me was very strategic thinking skills, critical thinking skills, business skills, etc. Right? So I got laid off. Believe it or not, in the real estate sector in my mid career, in my mid 30s, and I got laid off. And I really took it as an opportunity. I had 2 young kids at home. I thought, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. This is an opportunity now for me to figure out what my North Star is. And so what I did is I really thought about, if I had 3 job offers, what would be the 3 to 5 key critical factors that I would use to evaluate that? So I ended up thinking, number 1, sales and marketing. I always wanted sales and marketing. It's just that there weren't any jobs back then. It was a recession. You wanted sales and marketing. Yeah. Number 2, pay for performance.
Okay.
Number 3, because I was tired of working my butt off, 60-hour weeks and getting 10% bonus.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Number 3, flexibility. And number 4, have fun. Those are my 4 key criteria. So then what I did is I went out and explored. So I did informational fact-finding. So I started with passions. So I love to travel. So I thought maybe going into travel. So I met this. You just have to meet one senior person. Like if someone wants to go to executive search in an hour, I could say, here are the pros, here are the cons, here's what. You know what I mean? I could really, like if you know someone who's really experienced in it. So I met somebody in travel and they said, well, Sharon, it is all sales and marketing, pay for performance, flexibility to have fun. But back then, without the internet, there was a lot of front office administration. Remember travel agents all over the city. And it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel like, it wasn't quite what I thought it was. It felt more retail because it was more retail, right? That I didn't understand. So I crossed it off the list.
Okay.
And I thought real estate sales. Like I allowed myself to dream. So that's really important. Follow path, start with your passions, allow yourself to dream, and then explore. So then I thought real estate sales. So again, sales and marketing, pay for performance, flexibility, and have fun. But Laurent, here's the thing. do you like to drive? That was the question. No
In
internet.
Toronto.
No internet, right? No. And I said, no, I hate driving. So then you crossed it off the list, right? So you go through the different. So I took every interview because I had the luxury of time. And here's the thing. Every time you meet somebody, you have to articulate something. You're going to learn something about yourself, or they'll learn something from you. Okay. And so what happened was I met this recruiter. Her name was Susan Larkin. I love her dearly. She's now retired, so I'm happy to say her name. But anyways, it was a recruiter. I met her. She goes, I have a regulatory reporting job at the Bank of Montreal. So right away, I said no. No. I said, sorry, thank you so much, but not the right opportunity. But I thought she might have something else, right? I wanted her to get to know me. Yeah. You just never know. You just never know. And so anyways, a long and short event is she said, she's the woman who changed my life. And she just said, Sharon, have you ever thought about recruitment? And I had only been exposed to contingency. So I thought, no way. Like, you know what I mean? There were horrible experiences, felt like a piece of meat. It was very transactional back then for me. So anyways, she says, we're not hiring, but, one was a contingency firm, the other one was Korn Ferry. I had never heard of Korn Ferry because I wasn't at that stage in my career. Sure. They're a retained model. So they hire a lot of MBAs, lawyers, CEOs, et cetera. So very different level of search. So I stayed open, and at that point, I had a piece of paper, and I could have thrown it away, but I really thought she was sincere. She shared her background. She herself was an MBA CA. She preferred contingency because it was less stressful. And, then she shared that, she made a very good living. So I had no idea. But anyways, I went and actioned it, and I ended up actually with 3 job offers. I did actually end up, one with Korn Ferry, one with an old boss in accounting, and another one with a smaller company where I would be in finance, but I was hoping I could transition into sales. Because it's hard to sell myself as a salesperson when you're an accountant, right? So anyways, I did my 4 criteria, and executive search is sales and marketing. Pay for performance, flexibility, and have fun. It's all project-based. It's all sorts of different searches. I've done searches recently in cannabis. I just finished a search in cryptocurrency. So you learn, but it's all product-based. And I love it. And you have bigger clients, you have smaller clients. So it's a career that, So and then I went with Korn Ferry, learned how to do it with the best firm, one of the top 3 firms in the world. And then I've had my own practice for the last 20 years.
That's fantastic. So you're I think you said this a couple of times now. You start off by saying, here are my must-haves. You had 4 in your world. Yeah. Do you have a framework?
3 to 5. 3 to 5 is what I always say.
3 to 5 works? Okay.
Key criteria.
What's that framework? Like, what are the things they should consider? Is it flexibility? Like, I like yours, but what else? This is all in pursuit of passion, right? Like, how do you find that?
Absolutely. Look, the way I try to describe this, I say, go walk into a magazine store. For those of you who still read magazines, but you walk into like, actually, Laurent, it'd be interesting for you. Do you walk into one of those? They used to have this beautiful magazine store down at Brookfield Place, DCE Place. I used to love going in there. But if you walk into that magazine store, what is the first magazine that you're going to pick up?
Funny enough, I would look at technology and engineering.
And what do you do?
I don't do engineering anymore, but I work in technology. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like in the beginning, the first magazine I picked up, People. No matter how many magazines there were, I would always go to the People magazine.
That's brilliant, because you go to those magazine stands and there's like 1,000. Right. And it's, now that you mention it, like when I'm at the airport, right? You go to the airport and you see these magazine stands and you have nothing to do. You got to kill some time. I always go to business and technology ones. And I don't even think about that.
Bingo. And look at what you do. Like when you're following your passion, you're a North Star, right? So that's how I try to frame it for a lot of people, because I believe in keeping things simple. 3 key thoughts. It doesn't have to be complicated. And the reason why I want to do that is otherwise it just becomes too much, and then you feel overwhelmed, and then you don't do anything.
Yeah.
Because you're stuck, right? So my this is just learned from years of experience. Right. So that's how I would suggest start with that. You know what I mean? You could also look at what your hobbies are, right? You could also get feedback, from friends, you know what I mean? In terms of family, like, what do you think I'm really good at? So if you think about 3 key things, you start to see trends, right? Like you start to see and like trends. Like I was always like, Sharon, you're a connector. Sharon, you love people. Sharon, you have so you just start that way. And then you start exploring. Then you start thinking, okay, so maybe I could do this meets. Like, this was one key thing. I knew for sure sales and marketing. I was the one that always in school was selling most magazine subscriptions. You know what I mean? That type of personality, right? So, but I just never actioned upon it. And I ended up being a CA. I don't regret. That's the other thing I want to say. Never have any regrets in terms of what you've done. Like, I mean, sure, I'm a CA. I don't practice as an accountant, but those skills are totally transferable across everything. So I don't want anyone in your arms to feel like there's no right or wrong here. And there should never be any regrets because those skills that you've developed are transferable.
And they turned you into the person you are, right?
Like, got it. And like when I do executive search, I often say you don't need industry experience. It's the soft skills first because you've got experts in your company that will have the industry experience. So whether you're in marketing, HR, finance, even CEO, GF, you don't have the industry experience. I often say the only skill that's not transferable is sales. And that's simply because of the relationships. Like your contacts of 30 plus years, those are hard to replicate quickly. But otherwise, all other functions, your skills are it doesn't matter industry-wise. So that's why I don't look at people necessarily defined by their industry. It's like I took a gentleman out of the old MDS healthcare company and put it into a mining company.
Oh, really?
So I mean, again, it was the fit first. Like I had 2 candidates. Here, 2 have mining. Here's a third. Like we're talking zero mining experience. But again, he was a finance head. So put it into a tier 1 mining company, and he was there for 10 years. He excelled.
That's great. Okay, so step 1 is be clear on your criteria. Sounds like know exactly what you're looking for. And any merits on, there's tools out there that will assess your strength based on questionnaires. Is that worth the effort, or what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, if I were to add, there's a lot online now, thank goodness, so you can do it really cheap for $100. But, you could start, like we talked sort of about, to summarize this into 3 key things, like what gives you energy, right? Like passion. It's through your family, your friend, the magazine store, right? What's non-negotiable right now in terms of time, purpose, flexibility, or money? This is like a framework, right?
Yep.
What does success mean for you now? Not 20 years ago, but now, right? Like that changes in 20 years, right?
Sure.
And then you can use tools, exactly what you said. Like you could journal, like when was I last energized by work? You can start writing. Writing sometimes helps clarify things, I find. You can do the strength finder, like there's different things. There's Myers-Briggs, there's MBTI, Clifton Strengths, VIA values. And then, you sometimes keep a piece of paper by the side of your desk in terms of what I call energy trackers. You know what I mean? What drains you or fuels you, right? What gives you joy? Like right now, sitting here with you, Laurent, on a Monday morning, beginning of the week is giving me joy. What a great way to start my week, right? So, versus after this, having to pay my accountant's tax bill, probably.
No one likes that.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully that's helpful. Like
very helpful. Yeah. So once you have kind of that true north and your non-negotiables, what's next? Do you start sending applications? Like, how do you build off of that?
No, definitely you don't send applications. So you're an explorer, right, without sort of commitment, right? So, but don't job hunt, opportunity hunt. Right. In other words, I never knew I was going to be in executive search. Like no one ever said that. I just stayed open. I had my key sort of criteria and I explored. Right. So if you're going to try to find your North Star and you're not totally happy with what the role you're doing or whatever, I don't want you to be stressed out thinking you've got to figure it all out now. Right. So that's why just stay open and have conversations. So it's really about having those conversations that might lead you to your North Star. If it was that clear, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. If you knew exactly what it was, I know exactly what I did, like that gentleman, that CEO I talked about earlier, right? Yeah. He was one of a kind. Most are more in this situation going, I'm still trying to find my North Star. I'm not maybe 80% there, 50% there, but no one was, he was an exception for sure. Right. So just try lots of conversations, like, have coffee chats, exploratory interviews. You can even try tech consulting gigs. I've had people do that, like on the side or on the weekend. We take on a little small project or whatever, and talk to different people in different industries at different life stages. Don't just necessarily talk to people that are 45 to 60, like 45. Talk to people that maybe are finishing off their career.
Yeah.
Right, etc. Right. So, the purpose of the exploration is really discover what excites you. You know what I mean? Learn how to tell your story out loud. Because every time you go through this, every time I do one of these podcasts, it's always a different conversation, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I sometimes have to just stay focused. I have so many thoughts and so many ideas, but you'd be amazed at how, when you're having to say your story out loud, it gets either more refined or becomes clearer sometimes, right? Because you're trying to become more concise and actually be surprised. If I had not done that meeting with that recruiter, Susan Larkin, I never would have been found this my true north. You know what I mean? And I thank her every stage of my life. And, I thank her consistently. Milestone birthdays, I have parties, and I have different people from the stages of my life that she changed my life. And I've never let her forget that. That's the other thing. It's to sit in gratitude. Like, make sure you thank people sincerely with gratitude that, everyone likes to know that they've made a difference in someone's life. So I always let her know that.
I have to say, it is refreshing to hear take your time, because I find in this world of constant haste, the moment that you lose a job or decide you want to leave, you feel, how quickly can I get to the next thing, because I need that security. People are, relying on me, and not everybody's in the same position. I understand. Some people you got to pay the bills. But if it's about finding your true north, and we're at this stage in life in our 40s, and like we've got one more really strong kick at the can, especially if it's something we end up loving.
Yes.
We want to spend as much time in it as possible. And I think taking the time to do it right, to find the right opportunity that isn't going to flicker away in a couple of years is critical. And I love the coffee chat and all that. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Take the stress off yourself that you have to figure it out immediately. But on the flip side, take the action. Start the exploratory chats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do some testing. A great way is the testing, because it just gives you something to start with, right?
Mm-hmm. I like that. I love the consulting approach. I think it's a great way of getting in, and you have to do the work, so you see the ugly side as quickly as you see the good side, which is nice. Very good. Okay. So step one, know your 4 or 5 key things that you will not give up on that are absolutely required. Then research, test, get out there, talk to people, do some consulting gigs. I actually had a friend who would look at businesses that were for sale in the same industry he wanted to get into and act like he was going to buy one, so that he can sit with this with the owner and just get as much information as he can, even though he had no intentions of ever buying it.
Right.
I thought that was a great strategy that he was using.
Absolutely. It's like how I discovered the real estate wasn't for me, or the travel, etc. But then I just had as many conversations as I could. And that's where sometimes I get people who are very, they're not in my industry, or they're not whatever. I said, you don't know who their neighbor is. You don't know. If executive search has taught me anything, if you think about what I do as a living, Laurent, really executive search is sales and marketing, but it's also the highest form of networking. We typically find our top candidate through the network. Like, who do you know? And we don't post our jobs anywhere.
Yes.
That's why I would say to a lot of executives, you should be returning a calling. When I talk to executives who have been, unfortunately terminated suddenly or whatever, I just go, well, what have you done in terms of networking? And, I do hear often, men put their head down. Well, it's mostly men, I'll be honest, but their head down and they go, well, I'm just so busy. And I said, well, what about relationships with search firms or whatever? Oh, did you not return the call? I said, it's a 15-minute return call. Try to be helpful. I always say, return always those calls, because you get 10 or 15 minutes. They get to know who you are. And then number 2, be helpful. You might be able to talk about one of your friends, because we don't post our searches anywhere. It is done through a retained approach. So we reach out to you typically versus you reaching out to us. We're not shopping you. We're not shopping you. But I placed one gentleman who I met at industry events in life sciences in this particular industry, who was very pleasant. We knew each other, but he'd never been a client or a candidate. But a search came along and I thought, oh my gosh, the fit is there. I called him twice. He didn't return the call. Finally, on the third, he knew me. I said, well, I'm not really looking at that. I know the fit is there. Just 1 hour on a Zoom video call with my US CEO. And he agreed. And sure enough, my gut was right. And he got the job. His base comp, it was a NASDAQ listed company. His base comp went up by $100,000. So I gave him, but I also gave him the lecture. I did not have to call you back. I did not have to follow up, but I felt the fit was strong enough, and you need to understand that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could have just gone on to the next person.
Can you talk a little bit about, especially for somebody who wants to transition for something completely new that energizes them, like a passion focus? How do people let go of past identities? Because I think that's a problem. I think of it for myself. Like, I have defined myself as my job for a very long time. And if I were to move into something completely different, part of it is like, okay, but how do I introduce myself? Who am I anymore? Like, I'm assuming you run into that with especially executives at senior levels. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, I'm hoping then, like, you found your passion, et cetera, right? But this is where that framework, and so I do work with Dr. Andrea Wojcicki. I think I mentioned to you before, she is a PhD, a professor from Harvard, who really talks about research-based communication, talk. But she has this framework about the present, past, and the future that she teaches. And I can send you the information, after this call for you to look at. But it was actually in 2023, it was Harvard Business published, and it was the most downloaded.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love to get that. Yeah. I'd love to share it.
Again, it's a framework. Yes. And that's what I love about her. And I highly recommend her, by the way, for a podcast too. But anyways, so the way you would do it. So, give me a scenario. I've had situations like someone, I took out a pharma executive who went into retail, very senior. And when I approached him about the opportunity, he was a gentleman who didn't want to leave Canada. In pharma, you have to go out and leave the country.
They're in Jersey.
Yeah, you're in Jersey. He didn't want to do that. So I said, okay, so let's call him John. And so I said, John, well, then if that's the case, have you ever considered going on the other side, retail? And his comment to me was, but I'm a pharma guy. You know what I mean? I said, no, you're not. You are a seasoned executive that's very strong operationally, people leader, etc. Right? So anyways, the long and short of it is he did transition over to the retail side, one of the top retailers here in Canada. But I had to get him past that thought. So the way I framed it for him is I said, go do this role for 2 years. Now you've got both sides of it. You have both the retail, whatever. So when you go and you introduce yourself, like in that case, it was like, I'm a pharma, the president, I'm currently a senior executive with one of the top retailers doing this. But in the past, I was pharma. And then in his case, and then in the future, with the combination now of both sides, I can now bring to the table, So that's one way where someone has actually changed industries. Now, if you want to get out, I think what you're talking about, though, is like maybe even doing what I did. I was a CA before, and now I'm an executive search professional. Right? That was a real change. That's changing your role functionally, which is different. I think that's what you're talking more about.
Yeah.
Right. So then the way you would do that is the same thing do you want to give me an example and I'll try to model it? Like, give me an example of a situation.
Just somebody, what I've heard a lot of members is I've been a X in a corporation for 30 years and they just laid me off. And I now have a chance of doing something that maybe is tied to a hobby or something like that.
Yes.
But I am an engineer. Like that's who I am. And all of a sudden I'll give you an example of a member who actually was on a podcast. And so he was a lawyer down on Wall Street and did that for a number of years, was in his, I think, late 30s, early 40s. And so I can't do this. There's no purpose, there's no value, there's no love. And he then came up to Ontario and started Mama Earth, which is he goes to all these produce farmers and meat farmers and all that, and has created a shipping company and a very valuable company that drives all these products down to individuals here. And he became CEO. But for him, he was a lawyer for a long time. And it's just like, I mean, I guess it solves itself when you truly find your passion and you jump in and you now are proud to say, I am this versus that. But I guess it sometimes doesn't get. He moved to CEO, which is a great. If you're title based,
Correct,
right, and that's your identity, then that's one thing. But there I'm sure are people that are like, I want a simpler life. I'm going to go become a carpenter, or I'm going to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes they don't open themselves up to those ideas because they don't want to lose the status that they feel they've developed with the role.
So in that situation with that gentleman, you're right. Because he can say, I did this, I was the lawyer. But again, those skills are very transferable, right? Mm-hmm. Many people who are CAs or lawyers don't practice. Like many do exactly what you said. Even management consultants like McKinsey. And like I have one McKinsey senior gentleman who now is doing a food distribution business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Well, he went from that to a financial. I talk about career change. Harvard MBA, McKinsey, and then he went into one of the big banks in investment, lived in the UK, and now in this last stage of his life is running a food distribution business. Like, you know what I mean? A tier one name. Now it's from the US, so it's not his own business, but he has the distribution rates for all of Canada. You know what I mean? Sort of like, so he's done that 4 times. And look at that, right? McKinsey, senior executive in financial services, that moved him to the UK, one of the big banks, and then this, right? Sort of idea. So I think what you're talking about, Laurent, it's more difficult when you're at the early stage of making that transition. Like this gentleman that you interviewed, it's easy for him to say, I was a lawyer by background, worked in for a few years, but currently now the CEO of my own that does this. Like, I mean, that is an easy transition because it's also his passion, right? Mm-hmm. I think what you're talking about is that tough stage where you're still at the corporate level and I'm a financial services corporate type of person. See, so a lot of people at this stage, 40 to 65, actually do start their own businesses. I know some have gone off and do franchise. Like, believe it or not, franchise businesses. Yeah. I know some that have gone off into a farm. Like, you know what I mean? Especially, I've done sessions with partners like retiring from a top professional services firm. So after, they're age 60, what am I saying? Well, I want to sit on boards. And the first question I asked them was, why do you want to sit on boards? Like, you don't have to sit on boards. What is your passion? So I said, stop saying you're retiring. Change the word. Say you're rewiring or you're refiring. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's great.
Those are better words to use, right? Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, when people say retire, they have you on that island with the Palm Beach and a drink in hand. It's unfortunately very well branded that way when you say retiring. Refiring, rewiring is different, right? But in one case, he went and opened up a Christmas tree farm. Another one said, I have no interest in doing board roles, but he has passion with the museum, one of the top museums here, right? And I said, okay, I happen to know the chair of one of the museums. Are you interested in doing some volunteer work? He goes, sure. Well, the next thing I know, he's the chair of the audit committee. and he laughed at me. He said, Sharon, I got promoted so quickly, but again, it was his passion.
Yeah.
Right? Like for me, I was asked to sit on that board, but it's wonderful, but I said, it's still dead. Like it's this dead animal. I prefer live animals. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so again, it's where your passion is, Laurent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm inevitable, and I'm grateful for it. And I've interviewed thousands of executives, and I've heard all their stories. Because you think about what I do, I can ask them any questions. The only thing I can't ask is your religion. Are you married? You know what I mean? But otherwise, or I can ask, what are your strengths? What are your areas of improvement? Why are you great for this CEO role? I mean, so I've heard so many stories, right, and seen so many situations. And why people lead companies, right? And I've seen where they end up. And I'll be honest, sometimes I get, people that are very depressed. I said, if there's anything that I can tell you is that I guarantee you will land somewhere. I know it seems hard right now, but you will land. Sometimes it's your own business. Sometimes it's consulting. Sometimes it's just another role at another company. But I said, you have to put yourself out there. So that's the other thing, Laurent. If you really want to find your North Star, don't make it just a dream.
Yeah.
Make it an action. one step at a time in terms of what we talked about. Otherwise, I don't want you to be at that end stage of your life where they say, do you have any regrets in your life?
Sure. Yeah.
And your regret might be, I never found my true North Star.
Sharon, this has been great. So love everything we talked about. Just to recap, defining your North Star, stay open and exploring as much as possible. And then I think ultimately trust the process. It's going to take some time and you don't want to rush this incredibly important decision. So Sharon, this was fantastic. Any last words for our audience?
I'm just going to say, find your North Star with passion.
Very cool. Thank you. Love to have you back on at some point. I'm sure there's a million other things that we can talk about. And this was fantastic, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was great.
Thanks so much.